Hey, welcome back to another episode of the 938 podcast. My name is Craig Stevenson, and I'm an associate mission director here with the BBFI mission office in Springfield, Missouri. I want to first off say thanks for joining us today. Second, hey, click subscribe and stay up to date on all of our future episodes every Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock Central Time, right here on YouTube, talking all things BBFI missions. And today we have some special guests with us, some friends. And I feel like I say this about everybody that joins us because, like, I consider all of our missionaries our friends. But I've had the privilege to get to visit with you guys over in the Philippines, and really glad that you guys are here. This is Lance and Melanie Gotcher, missionaries to the Philippines. And so let's kind of start this way, okay? So give us just a little bit of information about you guys. I know yesterday was your 25th anniversary. And happy anniversary. It was so exciting to see that and pictures of your family and stuff. But just give us some background. Where did you grow up? How did you get to where you surrendered to go to the Philippines? And how long have you been in the Philippines? What are you involved with? Just some of the basic stuff.
Well, yeah, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. It was our anniversary yesterday, and we were talking yesterday. It's just flown by, and I think one reason it's flown by is because we're missionaries. We've had a lot of life experiences that maybe other couples haven't had. You know, going around the world, the other side of the planet. Just all those kind of things. So, but it's been quite a ride and quite a journey. And so I'll let Melanie go first, and maybe just share where she was born and her upbringing.
Okay. Going back to the very beginning.
Very beginning.
There you go.
I was born in Iowa. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa, and so I consider myself a little bit part Iowa girl, part Missouri. And then so we moved from Iowa to Missouri when I was 9. Had a resort on Table Rock Lake, so real close to Springfield.
Hey,
and
that's
then
nice.
High school moved to Springfield.
Cool.
But just backing up to my salvation, and that was when I was 5.
Yeah.
And so, I came to know Christ then. And then, honestly, I come from a big missionary family. So I'm the 13th missionary.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're the 13th missionary. Now, how many total missionaries are from your family? We were just talking about this before we started the podcast today. But
it's all those are, is that what you mean?
No, we think there's 15
total
missionaries.
15 total missionaries in your family.
Yeah.
I mean,
and counting.
And counting. That's true. Yeah. And counting. And that's incredible when you think about the legacy of that and what how does it feel to fall in a line of missionaries like that? What is that like? Because not everybody gets to experience that and be part of that kind of legacy.
I always say, like, our family reunions were like a missions conference. Not the way that I know them now,
That's
it's
awesome.
a big gathering.
Yeah,
and we would watch slides because that's what, we did. And I would literally dream about someday being a missionary. So
there used to be missionary slides, like the Rolodex thing that would go around in the circle. You know, that's a blast from the past.
Very much a blast from the past. And I'll throw back to another episode where Nathan Birch was talking about how much he loved the slide presentations and stuff.
Oh, I loved them.
So but I gotta say, just sitting here hearing that, that your family reunions were like a mission conference. How just as an outsider, I would love to be like in the room just to watch that conversation. Because that it just seems like that would be so encouraging and so cool to see all of that. Now,
I really enjoyed just sitting and like listening to my great aunts and uncles talk about their life, and some were in France, some were in different countries within Africa. Just amazing, just to sit and listen. I really dreamt about living in a hut someday, probably.
Oh, that's awesome.
Somewhere in Africa.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you said France and then down in Africa. So you got both those continents. So you guys are in Asia. So you guys are getting close to having the whole world covered.
Well,
in a lot of ways, yeah. So that's really cool. So let's go back over to Lance then. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, I grew up in Austin, Texas. I grew up in a Christian home.
Hook 'em.
Yeah, hook 'em horns. I'm a Longhorn for sure.
Born in Austin. Tell everybody I'm a Longhorn by default. So
yes, I am. Right. I am by birth.
Awesome. That's right.
I went to University of Texas for a year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That was kind of my family's dream for me. I was the first person, like in my family, to go to college, and so I always tell people it's probably a bigger deal for me to move to Missouri than it was to move to the Philippines.
Oh, yeah.
To move out of Texas was a big deal to my family.
Trust
it really
me,
was.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I grew up in church, went forward a couple of times before I actually got saved, did that whole thing, walked down, do you want to get saved? Yeah, I wasn't. It was December 9, 1983. That's when I received Christ, just sitting at home with my parents, realized I was on my way to hell. I did not have any hope of heaven and accepted Jesus as my Savior, you know. And so I went to a high school retreat, like after I graduated. We did a trip to Panama City, Florida, and I just got really close to the Lord then, and I was going to the University of Texas. Saw an old college pastor of ours, Mike Marcellus, who was a new pastor in Austin.
Cool.
And just saw him in the mall one day, and he said, "Hey, could you come lead worship at our church?"
Okay.
Oh, okay, let me pray about it. 2 weeks later, I'm 18 years old. I'm the worship leader at their church, which was a small church, you know. But
what a great opportunity.
Oh, yeah. I love, you know, I always tell people, like missionaries going on deputation, never discount small churches. Because that church has sent like 30-something people into ministry.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And I think 4 or 5 of us have gotten in the mission field.
Yeah.
So, you know, we were, I always love telling this story. Some people who listen to the podcast may have heard this story in their church, but that first year they had the first missions conference at that church. And so Pastor Mike asked me to come by his office. I said, "Lance, I want to pray for the missions conference. Would you come and pray with me?" Yeah. So he said, "Lance, I'm just praying for one person in our church to surrender." And I'm like, how easy is that prayer?
Yeah, sure.
Like, that's easy, right? Just one person? You know, we probably had a church of 150, 130, something like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, surely one person could surrender.
Oh,
you know?
yeah,
So
sure.
I'm old school, you know, we go through the service. I'm up at the invitation at the end. I'm leading, you know, four verses of a hymn, you know,
awesome.
and every verse I'm looking out, I'm like, well, you'd be a good missionary, and you'd make a great missionary. And
Not
that
thinking
person
about
would
himself.
Not thinking about
right.
me. So it was like the second or third night. Mark Williams, missionary in Mexico, was preaching.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit just knocked on my heart's door. And I always tell it like this. It was like, "Hey, dummy, it's you.
Yeah.
Like, you're the only one." And I was the only one who surrendered.
That's awesome.
Quit in the middle of the verse, quit singing in the middle of the verse,
Yeah.
went down, bawled like a baby. You know, I surrendered everything. And then started that journey of coming up to Baptist Bible College and then, you know, trying to figure out where we were going to go and all those things. You know, I think a very different story from Melanie's. You know, she grew up surrounded by missions. I'm the first missionary in my family. But I wanted to go back to one thing, though. I wanted to tell one more detail of her story because it's pretty powerful, I think. All of her grandfather's siblings were missionaries except him. And he really struggled with that. He wasn't a believer. He was the last one to get saved.
Yeah, sure.
And after he got saved, he really struggled with, you know, should he be a missionary?
Yeah.
Well, before he got saved, his sister had married a guy. They were going to China as missionaries pre-World War II.
Yeah.
And they had 2 sisters who were getting approved as missionaries. So they drove them up to the interview to get approved.
Okay.
And so, you know, it was the 2 sisters and then this husband and wife and their son.
Yeah.
And they were they went to church on Wednesday night up there, and they were praying at the prayer meeting, and was it Aunt Irma or?
It was Oma.
Oh, Aunt Oma that prayed, yeah. And she said, "God, if it would take my life, I'm asking you to save my brother Lauren."
Wow.
That's Wednesday night. Okay, she said, and her sisters heard her pray it.
Man, what
the next day, they were in a car accident, and her and her son were killed.
He was 3.
And they were on their way to China, you know, and approved and everything ready to go.
Wow.
Well, her grandfather heard that story, and after that, he received Christ.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, that set his whole family on this journey, you know, of being Christians and growing up in a Christian home and all these things, you know. And at one point, so they had 8 children, her grandparents. And at one point, they were giving 50% of their income to missions.
Oh my!
So he struggled with
Farmers.
Going himself, but he said, you know, I'm not supposed to go. I'm supposed to help send.
Yeah.
So all his siblings are missionaries. So he's kind of felt this obligation to help support them.
Wow.
You know? So
I've never heard that
Yeah.
story. That's incredible, and to think about the heart that she had for him.
Yeah.
I mean, and just being willing to say those words. You know, just the heart for him. That's incredible.
Prayer
and
is powerful.
It is. Yeah. It is powerful. And then to see where that goes, you know. Yeah. And I love this because there's 2 things that really just stick out to me in this conversation. Number one, the power of people being willing to give so others can go. Mm-hmm. And the power of one church, regardless of the size, being willing to pray and say, God, we're asking you to send one person. I mean, one person. That's what we're asking for this week in our mission conference. Yeah. God, call one person. I mean, can you imagine what would happen if every church in America
just prayed
that prayer every year?
Yeah.
God, one person from our church, send them. I mean, I just think about that. And I think, we're in the middle of Project 938.
Yeah.
You guys know what that is. And we're a part of that. And the whole idea is praying for more laborers, right? Matthew 9:38. And we're coming up through the fall, and we're getting ready for 938 Sunday, October 3rd. So excited about that. If you haven't registered for that yet, you need to go to project938.world and get registered, because a lot of great stuff.
Our church is going to do that in the Philippines.
Oh, yeah. And it's great to see all of our international churches signing up and being a part of that. But part of that process is, and part of the excitement for us has been, can we encourage churches to do what you just said? God, call somebody out of here. So, so do this. How did you guys meet? So obviously you were in Iowa, Des Moines, Iowa.
Well,
and then you came to down to Branson area, right? And then up to Springfield.
Yeah.
You were in Texas in Hook'em country, and then ended up coming to BBC. So did you guys meet at BBC?
Not exactly.
No.
Okay.
Melanie's brother Josh Barrett went to BBC with me.
Okay.
And so I was going to High Street. They grew up at High Street. And so there was a college retreat. Yeah. And so I think I was on the bus first. I was on the bus. Are you on the bus first? I got on the bus.
You walked on.
And so her brother, she's sitting with her brother. And I don't know how much you want to share about.
I'll share.
Yeah.
So
I love it when the wife shares the stories, because you get this is good.
What we love, a good love story.
Oh yeah,
this is our love story. So awesome. So he walks on the bus. My brother knows him, of course, from BBC, and says, "Hey, this is my sister Melanie. This is Lance." Cool. And that was it for me. Like, that was it. He sat down, he started visiting, and I literally fell in love at first sight. I did. We ended up visiting a lot on the bus ride up to Lake of the Ozarks, and then
during the retreat.
Very cool.
I called my mom the first night and said I met the guy I'm going to marry, and she was thrilled, and I have that as proof. So but it took another year of just being friends, and then going on a missions trip through High Street that we.
Yeah, I was good little Baptist boy, because Melanie kind of gotten away from the Lord before that, and then started, getting more involved in church. And so then when her mom found out she was interested in me, like, I was like her mom's favorite person for a while, at least.
Well, I forgot too that one of the best parts was when we're getting to know each other on that first day and the first night, he was telling me he's going to be a missionary.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my, because I'd always dreamed about it. I know I probably felt that call, you know, but it was more of a dream at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was just like, he's the one, and
then it became very real, very quick.
Yeah.
And took me a little while longer to figure that out, but I'm glad she knew early on. And But here's a great thing about the BBFI to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so she grew up in a missions-minded church. I came from a missions-minded church, but much different than High Street.
Sure.
Completely different than High Street,
Yeah.
Well, I came up to a BBFI church that had a heart for missions. And so, we went on this trip to Belize, Central America, and then we ended up going the next year to Jamaica.
Yeah.
And so that's where we got to see each other's heart for service.
Yeah. Very cool.
And I had missed a few meetings, and so High Street kind of roughed it back then. Yeah. We brought all our own food.
Okay.
Like, literally, you would eat a can of Vienna sausages,
a
slice of Velveeta cheese, and a fruit cup for lunch.
Yeah.
That was it. That was your lunch. But you had to bring your own plate. And
sounds like when we moved to Romania back in the early 90s.
Yeah, it might be very similar to communist.
Very similar to post-communist.
Yeah,
that's right.
I flew down 2 days later than them, so they're already there. They've already gone through the routine of what their meals are like. And so I get there, and I don't have a plate. I don't have anything to eat on.
We were supposed to bring our own,
we're in the middle of the jungles of Belize or whatever.
Sure.
So every meal she would eat first, wash her plate, and then come give it to me.
Oh, wow.
And so that just meant a lot to me. And
so that's when he knew that this was meant to be, right?
Yeah, just her heart. Not that she was serving me.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't that. It was her heart.
Her heart.
Because she was concerned about me, And then we had some really great experiences. We went to every major city in Belize, which Belize was only 200,000 people at that time. So, but we got to we were in line at Burger King, and there's a lady with her two sons there, one son, and we still have a picture of this lady. So we're doing this outdoor rally across the street from the Burger King. Anyways, we were in line with her. Hey, come see our rally,
Yeah.
So we invited her, and she got saved.
Wow.
And so, that was really cool to like some of the first things we did together was on a mission trip. We saw somebody got saved.
How
they
cool
got
is
saved.
that?
It really was, you know.
How cool is that? And what I love about that, as many missionaries as I talk to and interview, and we talk about it some periodically anyway, but how many of those stories have a mission trip at the centerpiece of it? I mean, how many stories have you heard missionaries that get up to get approved? Well, when I was on a mission trip, or I was in a mission conference. It's funny because you mentioned mission conference, and now we're talking about mission trips, and it's like a very common theme from story to story a lot of times. And so, for me, I'm sitting here thinking, man, if that's what God can really use, and He has used so many times, then how can I get my church on a mission trip?
Yeah.
Especially if I'm praying for God to call somebody out of my church. How can I get my church on a mission trip? And then how can I invest a lot into a mission conference, mission emphasis, or something like that? So, just sitting here, hearing these stories from all of our different missionaries, getting to kind of talk through that and hear those stories, it's really cool. So what would you say to a church out here that's never been on a mission trip before? About the importance of going. I mean, you guys are missionaries. You guys, a big part of your story happened right there on a mission trip. So what would you tell to people that are listening that would say, I've never been on a mission trip, considering going, and the world we live in is kind of crazy right now. Do I really want to go on a mission trip? What does that look like? What would you say to them?
It'll change your life, and it'll change your church.
There you go.
It absolutely will. And we know that we take mission trips in the Philippines. We take our Filipino church members, we take them on mission trips because we believe that our responsibility as Sumulong Baptist Church is to reach the world with the gospel.
I love that.
It's not America's job. It's not churches in America's job. It's our job. And so we take mission trips, and we've seen people surrender on mission trips because there's a lot of surrender that happens on mission trips too.
Oh, yeah. And how cool is it to hear this? Because I want to dig into this here for a couple minutes and when we get there. But missionaries were sent to the Philippines. People were saved. Churches were started. Filipino churches are taking mission trips, and people are surrendering, and they're being sent out to go to other countries. And it's just really cool to see the process of the gospel going from one part of the world to another part of the world, because we know the gospel is not cultural specific, right? It's not culturally specific to America. It's not culturally specific to the Philippines. I mean, it's for everyone. And to see everyone getting on board with that and hearing those stories is really cool,
Well, you were talking about, a mission trip, and I think camps are similar to a mission trip because you get out of your element. You get, social media stuff kind of is kind of pushed to the side a little bit, and so you're more in tune to really listen, to the Lord, I think. And in our church, we've sent out missionaries out of our church now too, and so we have. I'll go back in a second and maybe share this, but we've got a missionary in Cambodia. We've got a missionary going to Romania. So that would be the first Filipino family from the BBFI in Eastern Europe.
And they're going to work with some of our BBFI missionaries.
Yes,
in Romania, which is great.
Yeah, so that's awesome. And then we've got another batch of younger couples and younger people coming up that want to go to the mission field.
Yeah, that's cool.
But when we went to the Philippines, and like you said, we stand on the shoulders of a lot of people who went to the Philippines, and we went to work with Eddie and Cindy Lyons. We took over their ministry, live in their house, big blessing. So can't say thank you enough to the Lions for just, helping get us there to the Philippines and then handing that ministry over to us.
Yeah, sure.
So the first thing we did, though, in the Philippines was, we wanted to get involved in ministry, and we had a home Bible study.
Yeah.
So a lot of great couples in that Bible study, but one was Edu and Joy Tamayo, who are missionaries in Cambodia.
Yeah.
So he surrendered to ministry. He had already been saved, but got in that Bible study, surrendered to ministry, helped with one of our church plants, did his own church plant, which is what we require our missionaries to do. We require them to help plant a church in our home culture before they go to the field.
I love that.
Yeah,
how great is that?
So now they have started 6 churches in Cambodia.
Wow.
And that's been really exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then, I think when you go to the field, you're going to share the gospel, and we went as church planting missionaries. So you hope you're going to plant some churches, and so that's the dream. But I realized pretty quickly, I think the pinnacle, the ultimate for us was seeing somebody surrender, to missions.
Oh yeah.
So we've got youth camp. We've got Melanie has done refresher lady events.
Yeah.
We've got all these things that are kind of puzzle pieces that all kind of fit together in our mind, but they're all going towards one goal: sharing the gospel. But hopefully getting people to the mission field. So we've got a couple of guys. I'll mention them by name. Mon is one of our keyboard players,
Yeah.
a great guy, a very successful guy, but loves serving and has always served in our music ministry.
Yeah.
And then we got another guy named Paul who, amazing story. His dad was murdered. His mom abandoned their family, and he had to care for his 4 younger siblings. One of them has cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
Lived in just a very, very poor home, honestly. But he had a Christmas party at his house one year. And so Mon met this guy named Jervin, who was playing guitar at a music shop and said, "Hey, we're having a party tonight, and we're gonna be doing all this praise music. Why don't you come and play with us?" Well, that night Jervin came and he got saved.
I love Jervin. That's
so
awesome.
Jervin's awesome,
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
he and his wife Abby now they got married during COVID, but he came to youth camp that year, and then he surrendered to ministry. So he graduated our Bible college. And then at the graduation, he said, "Pastor, I'm from this place called Daraitan. We need a church there." I said, "Great, I nominate you." He said, No, I don't mean me. I said, "Well, I mean you." So he's planted a church there now. And
Good
then
for him.
his wife,
Awesome.
and he and his wife are praying about going somewhere in Southeast Asia as missionaries. So to just see personal evangelism, then youth camp, then our Bible college, then church planting, and now them wanting to go to the mission field. Again, it's all these puzzle pieces that go together, and it's just, that's the pinnacle. We love every step along the way. We love every victory, but, seeing somebody surrender to go to the field, that's what we want. And Jervin's a great staff member. He's a great preacher. I hate to lose him, but I'd love to lose him to the mission field.
Sure. When I was over there, because my last trip that I was on was 2 years ago, coming to see you guys in the Philippines. And first off, thanks for letting me come.
Thanks for coming.
I had a great time.
Yeah, thanks for speaking at our missions conference.
I enjoyed that. And that was a puzzle piece for me. So you talk about the idea of the puzzle pieces and things. That was something for me that I had never seen on the mission field before. Was a mission conference like it was when I was over there with you guys. In Romania, we didn't have all the churches that we have in the Philippines, and you don't have the missionaries that are going out as much, and there's not the network of churches that support missionaries like they do in the Philippines. And so for me to come over and be involved in speaking at the conference and having a chance to talk with your Bible college students and everything that we got to do while I was there, getting to see these missionaries from different churches and different non-American missionaries come to a church for a conference and show their videos and go through the international food night. And one of the craziest things for me was eating Romanian food in the Philippines, which was
it pretty good?
Yeah, it was great.
Was it pretty
it was great. And so getting to see that in person and not just hearing about it, it kind of took things to a whole nother level for me about where things can go if our focus is where it needs to be, right? It's how can you have people called out of your church on the mission field that can then go travel around and raise support, just like we do here in America. And just a lot of times we don't see that here. So it was just really exciting to see firsthand what that looked like. And so
I was going to say a moment ago, if our church can do mission trips, then churches here in America can certainly do mission trips. We've been to Cambodia, Vietnam, Mongolia, Kenya, and Romania. We've done mission trips with people in our church to all of those countries. And we now support over 50 missionaries monthly from our church. And so, that's something we want to grow each year. We'd love to get to 100. We'd love to keep growing that. We do Faith Promise missions. So some people in our church give 20 pesos, about 40 cents a week. Some people in our church give a lot more than that. And it's just, I think it's just the ask, right, of presenting it to our people, even though some people might consider the Philippines as poor country. It doesn't matter if someone's poor or rich. There's rich people in the Philippines too. It doesn't matter. We want, equal sacrifice. It's not equal gifts, but we want equal sacrifice. My goal every year in our missions conference is everybody would do something in giving, and praying too.
Well, and I love that. And it was so evident that your people have a heart for missions. And, I was talking with someone the other day about the fact that after a few years, a new pastor comes into a church. After a few years, that church starts to take on the personality of the pastor. And from what I've seen, and I don't know that I've ever made this observation to anybody, but it seems like ministries on the mission field are very much the same way. And so if you have a missionary who's driven towards seeing people surrender to missions and get saved, they're going to cultivate that within their people. And to see that firsthand play out. And then you mentioned you've been to Romania, you've been to Kenya, a few Cambodia, a few different places. How many people out of your church are now being missionaries to the locations where you visited? Because I know Romania was one of them, right?
Romania, Cambodia, and then we'll see about like Vietnam. I think there's some people coming up that might end up going that route.
So how cool is that? Going back to the importance of those mission trips and things like that.
But we talk about a lot of different countries. It's not just even those,
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
So there are people in our church that, hey, I'd like to go here. I'm thinking about that, or I'm praying about that, you know. So again, we started praying the 938 prayer a few years ago.
Awesome.
And God answers, He really does. And so, we're just anxious to see and curious to see where everybody will go.
Yeah, I love that. Well, hey, if you're just joining us, we have Lance and Melanie Gotcher with us today, missionaries to the Philippines, and excited to have them. But if you're just now joining us, click subscribe and stay up to date on all of our future episodes of the 938 podcast, and we would appreciate that. And so back to you guys. So you've told us a little bit about what you guys do. Now, you have some pretty incredible school ministries in the Philippines. And I didn't realize the scope of how big some of those schools are and the opportunities that are there. Just take a minute and talk about that.
Yeah, and like right now we can't get into them because of COVID. That's one big prayer for the Philippines. All this last year there was no in-person school. There won't be any in-person school next year. But I was just talking on our staff meeting Zoom call this week. They're going to be opening up some, high school ministries again. It's going to look different, be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But one big blessing is with Manna Worldwide, which I get to serve as Asia director for Manna as well. We go in with feeding programs.
Yeah.
So every school in Metro Manila has to have a feeding program, but they get no budget for it. Most of the schools have no budget, no help.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of help now with the elementary schools,
Yeah.
but high schools have almost no budget. So we come in and say, hey, can we help with a feeding program?
Yeah.
Well, one feeding, no, for like a whole year.
Yeah.
So we can do that for about $200 a month.
Yeah.
Feed about 100 kids in a school.
Cool.
And so at the height, we were probably ministering to around like 60, 70,000 students.
Oh my goodness.
And on different campuses.
60 to 70,000 students.
Yeah, so we had the potential to reach that many,
Yeah.
Some schools, our small schools are like 1,500 to 2,000 students. Those are the small ones. And then it goes up. We have some schools we minister, they're like 14,000 students. So it's kind of overwhelming. It's a little city, and what's crazy is you can go in and share the gospel. You can teach English, you can do sports, you can do drama. You could do anything you wanted. If you just went in and wanted to minister to their students or help with an existing program or do something new. And that's one thing I tell young people here in the States. You want to come over and do sports, do music, do arts, whatever. You can come. We can plug you into these different schools. There's schools that are just waiting for people to come, because some people think, well, I don't preach, or I don't sing, or I don't do some maybe traditional things that we do in church ministry. In those schools, the sky's the limit.
Which is, and we're seeing that more and more around the world, more and more opportunities for people that are not the traditional church planting missionary, right? Maybe a professional career. And that's why we started the WIN program, the World Initiative Network. So to give a pathway for those people to go and serve in places like the Philippines. And that's incredible. And we've had, I think, some WIN missionaries even consider coming over to the school that your kids went to. What's the name of it?
Faith Academy.
Yeah, Faith Academy. And so, if you're out there and you're a professional of some kind, medical, education, whatever it is, want to encourage you to pray that God would call you and people that have skill sets like yours to go help missionaries like Lance and Melanie here, because you guys could use the help. Yeah. I mean, there's no shortage of opportunities in the Philippines, right? So let's transition just a little bit here, because I want to talk to a missionary wife for a second, because we love getting to visit with missionaries and missionary wives, and just kind of hear your heart for ministry. I mean, having your kids in school over there, going to Faith Academy now. Some of them are back here taking their next steps in what that looks like for God's will in their lives, and coming back to Bible college and things like that. What does this journey look like for you from a missionary wife's perspective?
My role has changed a little bit. I've said in the last few years, with more of our kids coming back to the States and being out of the home and out of the nest, and I've been able to do more, honestly, with ministry, because I've always said my first ministry really was, obviously to my husband, but to my kids too. And I was told that by very wise missionary too,
Cool.
just to not forget the kids, you know. And so
sure.
definitely a big priority, but it's freed me up now we just have one left.
Yeah.
She's a junior, Sophia. And so been able to just have a bigger vision for like ladies ministry.
Yeah.
Like Lance mentioned, we do a big ladies conference or a retreat. We kind of change it up every other year, but refresher is what we call it.
Yeah.
And I stole that from a pastor's wife here in the States.
Nice.
With permission.
Yeah, with
there you go.
permission. Yeah. And so just a heart for, just really getting together. And we've always done like ladies ministry, but that's just on a larger scale, just to really reach out to a lot. Because you talked about the high schools, to reach out to high school teachers. We invite all the teachers of the high schools that we minister to, and we have hundreds come from that. And we let them come for free, and many have come to know Christ. So that's our big focus, and just really to minister to them, because teachers in any part of the world sometimes are not thanked and they're kind of forgotten, and they're really heroes. So we want to really make them feel
As
special.
the husband of a teacher myself, I appreciate that attitude for sure, because you're right, and that's not just here in the States; it's all over the world.
Yeah. So done that. Hope to be able to have more in the future.
Sure.
And then. Gotten to lead some Bible studies on the campus with high school teachers too.
Wow.
And that's been really exciting.
Yeah, that's cool.
I really enjoy that because that's kind of more on my level, just more kind of small, intimate. But and then I help with the kids ministry in our church, which is huge. And I have a great Sunday school director that does so much. Last year was our first year to do online, Vacation Bible School. So we're doing it again. We're gearing up for that right now, and I'm just kind of communicating with her. But the kids really participated, and they were really just in the beginning of learning how to even go online. And some don't have it, but they would all meet and congregate at someone's house that had Wi-Fi, or and so enjoy that a lot too.
Well, and I love that technology's advanced to the point where it allows you to even do that while you're here stateside and still be connected and involved in that. So that's really cool. I appreciate your heart for people, and that's obvious. Just anytime, first moment I walked into y'all's house and you offered me something to eat and drink, I'm like, just the hospitality.
I get that from my mom. So.
Nice, very cool. Well, it's just an honor to have you guys on the podcast, and it's always great to hear from our missionaries. It's just another special moment for me because I've been there to see the work and what you guys are involved with, and so getting to share some of that with our viewers. If you're watching today and you're looking for a great place to go when things open back up and that you can get back into different places, I encourage you to think about going to see Lance and Melanie in the Philippines. And if you're in a church if you're a pastor of a church and you're looking for a missionary in the Philippines to take on for support, I want to encourage you to consider Lance and Melanie and their ministry and what God's doing through that, through their ministry over in the Philippines. And so, as we kind of wrap up, we could talk for days. And I love, because you said it earlier before we even started today, that Lance likes to talk and I like to talk.
You're both talkers.
And that's okay.
I'm a talker too.
Yeah. Speaking of things that we both do, we both share the same birthday too. Just random things.
Best day.
Blaze Lehrman and Nate Harmon. All of us have the same birthday, which is crazy. So. But where that came from, I have no idea, but that's okay. So, but as we wrap up, knowing that we could talk about things for days, what would you like? Is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers? Anything you'd like to tell our churches or the people that are sitting out there in the pews just watching this podcast and being involved in this?
Well, I think, in this year that we've been in, or 14 months or however long, this COVID's kind of drug out now. It's kind of easy to get focused on all of that and forget that there's still a lot of great things happening around the world. And, we had Fellowship Week a couple weeks ago. I was so encouraged during Fellowship Week. And if somebody hasn't been back to a Fellowship Week in a while, come back next year. It was so encouraging and so positive and uplifting, and so many great stories and great sermons. And I appreciated just, seeing again our heart for missions as a fellowship. And so I love that the missions office is doing the 938 project.
Yeah.
And we were talking before the podcast started, sometimes it's just the ask. I think sometimes we just we don't ask, and sometimes we might think, well, everything's shut down. It's going to open back up again.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And the truth is we need more laborers in the field.
Yeah.
We need more missionaries to be going to other countries, to other cultures, to go cross-culturally and share the gospel and plant churches. We need that. And so I think that's, very much on our hearts is what can we do to help encourage people. So we have people coming over doing internships. Mm-hmm. We've had interns come over, which has resulted in, I think, almost all of those people either going into ministry or going back to the mission field, which is great. So, we'd love to invite people to come over and do internships, and that's very impactful.
Yeah, sure.
But one thing I think that came out to me in Fellowship Week and stuck out to me was, again, just what God is doing all over the world. And I believe it was John Connerup who shared, we now have about 4,000 churches, here in America that support a missionary or somehow connect with the fellowship. And then we have 20,000 churches around the world.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know that or understand that. 24,000 churches that are connected to BBFI around the world.
And let me speak to that too, because that doesn't speak to the churches. And we've kind of alluded to, a missionary going to the field, starting a church, them reaching people, and then that person going to start another church and another church. So we don't, that number doesn't include the second and third and fourth generation churches that could be out there. We just have no way to track that. And so it's just really great to see that worldwide network that we have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and one thing I'd just like to say to anybody watching that is connected to BBFI or has had a part in our ministry or even hasn't had a part in our ministry as far as supporting us, thank you so much, because the fellowship is such a great organization to get people connected, to get even that list of churches that you can call.
Yeah.
And so just the fact that we're together and we're unified with one common goal is encouraging to all of us as missionaries. Whether you support us or not doesn't really matter to me when what I'm speaking about right now, because we're all one organization working together. Yeah. And so and when we've gone to the field, one thing we always like to make sure people hear from us is thank you, of course. Yeah, but we realize this isn't us who's doing this work. Yeah, that's right. God called us there. Yeah. It's the Holy Spirit that's doing the work, and it's churches and partners and friends and supporters and prayer warriors who have stood with us for 21 years now and helped support us so that we can go. Yeah. So it's not something, this is Lance and Melanie's ministry. This is our ministry together as a fellowship. It's our people in the Philippines at Sumulong Baptist Church. It's all of us together. Yeah. I always tell our church we go out like this mighty army. Yeah. We're an army that goes out to reach the world with the gospel. So thank you to anybody who's listening. Yeah. Thank you if you've ever had a part in the fellowship. It's impacted our lives in a tremendous way. Yeah. And I hope there's more to come. I hope there's more people that answer the call. Yeah. I hope there's more churches that are planted, more missionaries that are sent out. Yeah. We've got to stay focused on that 938 project, 938. Yeah. Of just praying that God would call people. If He calls them, then we have to help send them. Yeah, somebody's got to go. So
absolutely.
Again, it's all those puzzle pieces together again.
And this is the time.
And this is the time.
Perfect time.
Yeah. Absolutely. No better time than right now. Yeah. And I'm excited that you guys are going to be a part of that in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. Your church is there. And you take a look at 24,000 churches, roughly, give or take. Mm-hmm. If you have 24,000 churches in all time zones, that means on that Sunday, and we talk about this some, but every hour of the day, because of the different time zones, there's going to be churches around the world praying for more laborers. So one time, one voice, all time zones, 24,000 churches made up of hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, when you add all of that up, all of those lifting up the same prayer requests. Looking forward to seeing what God does with that, because I was reminded this past week. So Matthew 9:38, praise the Lord of the harvest, that He would send forth laborers into the harvest. Right? That's how I quote it, and for some reason I've been stuck in quoting it that way. But that's not what it actually says. It says, praise the Lord of the harvest, that He would send forth laborers not into the harvest, but to His harvest.
To His harvest, yeah.
And I've known that, but this a couple weeks ago I was reading through that, and I was thinking through. I always say the harvest, but it's His harvest, and you want to talk about a very powerful. The implications of it being His harvest is really incredible if you think about that. And so we're just simply asking God to call people into His work, to go and reach people in His harvest, and that should provide a lot of boldness to go and do that, and willingness on our part to follow God, not into some unknown region, because He's already there.
Yeah.
He's already he already knows. He's already there. He's already gone before us, and it's His harvest that He's wanting us to be involved with. So,
and I think we need to get ready post-COVID.
Yeah.
There's so many things I love about the Philippines. The Philippines is this ripe, mission field is ripe for harvest, right? There's been a lot of people saved, a lot of churches planted, but one of the things I don't necessarily love about the Philippines is we're the second most disaster-prone country in the world. So we've been through floods and typhoons and all these things, Well, every time we go through one of those things, God has grown our church afterwards.
Wow.
So we had a big flood back in 2009. And I thought, I don't know how we're going to get through this. There's about 4 months of relief work where, things kind of shut down. All we could do was relief work. And then after that, our church grew.
Yeah.
And then we've gone through other trials and other things, And so I know that when God takes us through something like that, it means that growth is waiting for us. So we need to be ready, I think, as believers, as churches. Let's get ready for what God's going to do.
And think about that not just in the Philippines, but on a worldwide scale.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm excited about, because the opportunities, we already know that the population is growing. We already know that there's more opportunities out there than ever, and that's only increasing. And as we go towards the end of the COVID pandemic, just the opportunities that are going to be there are going to be tremendous all over the world. So, look, if you're watching today, and the question for you is how can you get more involved? How can you support more missionaries? How can you ask God to call more people? What does that look like in your life? Are you willing to go? Are you willing, if you're a parent, are you willing to pray and say, God, send my children to the mission field? Going back to the heart that we heard earlier, just if it costs my life, I want to see them get saved. I mean, do we have that kind of heart for people? Because that's the kind of heart for people that God can really use. Yeah. And my prayer is that not that I'm always there, but that I would develop that in my life and stay more in that mindset and in that heart for people. And so that's the challenge for you today. Thank you guys for being on here.
Thanks for having us.
Great to have you. Yeah. And again, if you're late to the show today, click subscribe and stay up to date on all future episodes. And we'll see you next week right here, Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. on the 938 podcast.